script initially had us turning up in Iceland to an ice palace built by our villain, and then that was pretty much it. There was a car chase, I remember being in there, but it was always somewhere. It drove around over volcanoes and geysers or something like that.
We'd written it, and there was the ice palace, but Lee rightly pointed out, well, you've got this fantastic ice palace, but you only have a couple of dialogue scenes in there. And so he said, let's sink the ice palace and have a car chase inside it.
We just wanted to record a special tribute episode to Lee Tamahori, the director of Die Another Day. Now, he's died recently, very sad, after a battle with Parkinson's. And yeah, the news filtered through quite quickly, and it's been great actually to see a lot of tributes come up to him. Again, we're not going to toe poke around it, whatever the phrase is. Die Another Day, we know, is a divisive Bond film, and to be fair to Lee, he did own up for some of the things that some of the fans have disagreed with and thought went too far, for instance. We will get into all that, but also we're going to look at his other films, because some of his other films I think are terrific. Even if you don't like Die Another Day, you can't really deny that he's had a very successful career, especially from someone coming from New Zealand. You know, it's only a tiny country, long way away from Hollywood. To go all the way and make some really big Hollywood films and a Bond film is pretty impressive. So he's had a great body of work, and yeah, we just want to give him as much praise as possible, because he, it's awful, but there's not that many directors left who are still alive in the Bond franchise. Only a select few have been given that amazing privilege, and a few of them, of course, have done more than one. So it is quite something when one of them passes. So I think it is only appropriate to do a tribute. We did do one for Michael Apted, of course, a few years ago when he died. And at the moment, I think one of us said, Matt, was it you? It just seems that quite a few of the Pierce Brosnan era people are, quite a few of them have died in the last few years since we've taken over. There's lots.
Yeah, even in recent weeks, Checky Cario. And then looking a bit further back, like Robbie Coltrane, Joe Don Baker. It's
Raoul from this film, Die Another Day, Raoul.
Raoul, yeah. So, maybe that's where we are in that stage, but to me, it seems too soon, because the Brosnan era is, pretty recent and everything. So, yeah, it's really sad, and it's, as you say, it seems like the directors, we seem to have lost a few of them, which is really sad. And as divisive as Die Another Day is, there are still lots of fans who really like it. There's stuff about it that we all really like. Whatever you think of it, he directed a James Bond film, and he's part of that legacy, and he's part of the whole thing. And it's really sad that he's died.
I mean, Chris, we talked about him and his style and his filmography at length in our ridiculously long Die Another Day review, so do check that out on the podcast. But just to sort of look into the man, it was quite they seemed to ask quite a few people first, didn't they? Like Tony Scott's and those kind of people.
Yeah.
And Lee Tamahori was a name that very few had on the radar at the time. But it was quite a bold choice, I think.
Yeah, I think considering when you look at his filmography and how, I think it's fair to say a little bit uneven, but fairly eclectic, in terms of like the film that put him on the map is, very gritty, handheld. It's like the antithesis of Die Another Day. So I think it's, like I say, he does get a lot of criticism for the film, but I don't think it all sits on him at all, to be honest with you. I think he came in and was trying to bring Bond into, the 2000s, and you can see the influences, throughout the entire film.
Bond movies are going to have to approach the day when they're not shot on film anymore. That's going to happen. The manipulations that allows you now with dealing with the digital technology are endless and effortless. And I think some of the stuff we're doing in this, in terms of the big stunt effect sequences, are only going to be a precursor to what is going to follow in the next generation of Bond movies. The high-end action sequences that are done for real are still going to exist, but I think that it's going to be half of them will exist for real and half of them will be augmented with, and sometimes they may move into entirely digital special effects that way.
He's been very adventurous on this film. And I think I'm pretty sure that was a conscious decision, that he wanted to take Bond into this millennium in terms of technology. And we've certainly done that. You know, it is the first Bond where we've used major league CG.
How much he, you know, those decisions that he made, I'm not too sure, like some of the editing choices, very much of their time. But I think, yeah, a really eclectic career, and like I say, some really strong standout films that people often forget that he was involved in. The film are more famous than, or rather, the stars, or you know, the stories are more famous than than him. So I think it was quite, you know, it's sad to see that he's obviously that he's died, but he does have quite a legacy that he's left behind. And not only that, he'd obviously worked in television as well in the past few years. So, you know, a really interesting career that he's had.
I think Barbara had seen, always the story, it's always Barbara has seen Once Were Warriors, which was the film that put him on the map.
Gee, where did those muscles from, bro? You been lifting those weights, huh? What, you done leg, am I right? You wanna fuck with me? You should learn to pay your respects. In case you want to know, it's Jake. Jake the Muss.
Just thinking to the future, people are very like, oh, Denis Villeneuve, oh, well, we're going to get a very serious, long, gritty film now. But as you've said, Chris, it doesn't necessarily relate to what's gone before. When you make a Bond film, absolutely, you can't really extinguish it from the previous films he'd done. And I think to say Once Were Warriors is the same director, you might be struggling to say that, especially with some of the ones that came later as well. You know, like Next or whatever.
Yeah. I think I'd say that like for me, one of my favorites is the Edge. That really stands out because there's a slightly, you know, again, it has quite a lot in common, I think, with Die Another Day. I know that sounds strange, but there's a slight kind of, the situation is slightly ludicrous, you know, but he manages to sort of ground it in certain scenes and makes it sort of believable. And I think that you know, at times he does show, you know, that steady hand of a really competent filmmaker, not letting it always kind of, you know, not letting the material kind of let loose and it become kind of, you know, farcical, which something like The Edge could be. Anyone dealing with Mamet's kind of dialogue is almost, you know, ludicrous as it stands, but the way it's delivered and everything. But I think that one for me is a firm favourite of his.
Matt and I have been obsessed with it since it started. I think it's one of my favourite films ever. I think it's that good.
Yeah.
What one man can do, another can do.
You can't kill the bear, Charles. He's ahead of us all the time. It's like he's reading our minds. He's stalking us, for God's sakes.
You want to die out here, huh? Well, then die. I tell you what, I'm not gonna die. No, sorry. I'm not gonna die. No, I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it, I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it. I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it. Say I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it.
I'm gonna kill the bear.
Say it again.
I'm gonna kill the bear.
And again.
I'm gonna kill the bear!
Good. What one man can do, another can do.
What one man can do, another can do.
Say it again.
What one man can do, another can do.
And again.
What one man can do, another can do.
Yeah. You're goddamn right. Today, I'm gonna kill the motherfucker.
I've seen Once Were Warriors. It's like a New Zealand kitchen sink drama, really.
Yes, yeah.
When I first went to university, a guy I met early on, I think his dad was from New Zealand and his mum was Australian. But Once Were Warriors was like his favourite film, and he had it, you know. And it's Tamora Morrison, isn't it? Who's
yeah.
Who has gone on to have a pretty good, you know, career in Star Wars and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Edge, I think The Edge is absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love it. Well, I think we've said this on the Die Another Day review, but me and Harry were with Dad going from we were in South Spain and we decided to go for the day to Tangier, so to Morocco, and on the little ferry along the way we watched with no sound, like the first half of The Edge, like kids sing, the guy being mauled to death. Anyway, um, I love it. I really love it being, this survival, this like sort of, not creature film, but also the whole thing about Alec Baldwin's is he or isn't he having an affair with, or has he been having an affair with Anthony Hopkins' wife, a guy who's really rich, but he's wanting more and all. I just think it's brilliant. And two, that yeah, it's OTT in some places, but I just the central performances from those two are outstanding. And yeah, as you say, it can't all just a director has such an influence on that. And yeah, I absolutely I love that film, and I could watch it any time almost. I think it's brilliant.
So on one hand, you're directing a David Mamet script, and then on one hand, you've got Purvis and Wade, haven't you? So
Yeah.
say no more. No, no, but that shows that you are limited with the script in some respects. But I think that limiting nature of what was on paper with Mamet, and if you go on location, I mean, it's nearly all on location, isn't it? It's all real. The bear, it's Bart the bear.
Mhm.
And you've got two brilliant actors. You can't really lose, can you, with that? It must have been such good fun to film.
Mm.
Yeah, and like you say, just having two fairly big performances, from those actors. And again, that because that's such a fine line. Because like I say, Mamet's writing is almost like bigger than life. The way that people kind of spit dialogue at each other, and the way that even sentences are phrased, it's so distinctive. And I think some people kind of just don't get that, which is why you've seen some not great adaptations of his work. But when people understand it, it is bigger than life, and I think the premise is bigger than life. That it's a ridiculous situation to be in. Fending for yourself, being trying to kill a bear with someone who you equally hate, and obviously, there's a lot to sort of unpack on that. But yeah, I think it's great, and I think that the one thing I can always say about regardless of the quality and the critical reception of his films, that they're never boring. And I
Oh,
think that for me, that's a sort of cardinal sin of any sort of filmmaker. Is it being is this an action film? Is this meant to be entertaining? Yes, right. If it's boring, you've missed it completely. I don't care what it looks like or what you're doing. If it's boring, that's it. And I think
Mm.
all of his films, even like the later stuff like Next and the Triple X films, patchy, not always great, but they're never boring. And I never feel like, it was just like that was entertaining. It kept me entertained for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I think what more can you ask for? Particularly if that's just the sort of contract, beforehand, which is, do you want to watch something brainless and entertaining for an hour and a half? Yes, right. Well, I'm into that. And if you do that, I'm happy. And I think a lot of his films later on was that kind of ilk.
Well, I know it was the one before Die Another Day, or I think it was Along Came a Spider, but I watched that relatively recently, not knowing that it was Lee Tamahori. And like I'd seen Kiss the Girls, and in my mind that was like a bit babishly because it's Morgan Freeman, but like a sort of Descendants of Seven, or like
yeah,
a
yeah.
gritty serial killer type film. And I can't remember whether Kiss the Girls was probably halfway between that. But then Along Came a Spider seemed a bit more like
Yeah.
like an entertainment thriller rather
Yeah.
than probably not that night, not the 90s into the early noughties type. That I don't know. It just slightly changed, but I did find that film entertaining. I
Mm.
can't. I think I can remember a lot of it, and there's twists and turns, but I
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
I did, I did enjoy it.
Imagine the patience, the dedication.
You sound like an admirer.
Well, he's like a spider. And I happen to like spiders.
I quite like this guy's work.
And I do think that actually it is better than the first film. I think it's far more entertaining and much more solid in that kind of the storytelling is much. I think it's Gary Felder did the first one.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that Lee Tamahori does a better job, and I know it starts with a car crash on a bridge, and I think the CGI isn't particularly great, but it is that period where everyone's like, that late 90s was like, well, we have to use CGI now,
Yeah.
Final
and people
Destination.
weren't kind of, actually we're just putting it for the sake of it. Apart from
Yeah.
that, I think it's again a really entertaining, solid thriller, and I think
Yeah.
again, did a good job.
Mm.
Both, yeah, both of them have pretty big twists, I seem to remember, but
Mm.
both, yeah, really good entertainment that have, I don't know, they've been forgotten a bit, but they were pretty successful at the time. And I think hasn't there been one with what's his name from Jack from Lost has done one. There's the Alex Wright,
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Alex Cross, is it?
Alex
Yeah,
Cross. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the.
I
So
can't
yeah,
remember the name of
And
the
there's a
guy who
TV
played.
series as well, I think.
yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
worth checking out. I think you've got to think back in the time that Dino of the Day was made. It's like that cliched MTV generation, isn't it? Time. I don't know whether it was a bit Bruckheimer, but of course Christian Wagner was editing, and he went on to edit next with Tamahori. So there was that style that isn't all the director. It's not all when they were out filming. Let's do this. That is often done after the fact, even though they had that in mind.
Christian, my editor, has been cutting it very fast and very progressively modern, and I use that phrase advisedly because I'm always a little hesitant myself about that kind of music video approach to action. What we didn't want to end up with was just another car chase where the cars roared along and had squealing tires and they're on ice, for God's sake. We're going to try and avoid all these cliches. But we're using a device known as speed ramping, which is no stranger to television commercials, music videos, or even some movies now.
This shot was shot at this speed, running across the glacier and then revealing the two cars in the ice. And then they came closer and went out of frame.
You increase and decrease the speed of the film at alarming rates, very fast, very slow, according to however you want to use it. And it's usually to do with music or to do with the pace of things.
Chris, we can talk about, Mission Impossible 2. It's all the same sort of thing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
with that in mind, though, it's a much more plausible choice for that time. And if people don't know Chris very well, when he was on about I'd rather have a exciting, patchy Bond film than a worthy, boring one, I assume you were talking about Spectre.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah. This isn't the celebration episode of that, so
Yeah. You can skip that bit.
yeah. But yeah, in terms of Dine of the Day, yes, people will have mixed feelings, and I think Lee Tamahori in some interviews has said, yes, I sort of vetoed some of the decisions. I was the one who wanted to make it more fantastical. But it's a little bit of an exaggeration. Some of just the stock, that's the silly CGI one. I mean, that's ridiculous to dismiss the whole film like that.
By far the most unnerving stuff was Bond hanging off an ice wall in a world that didn't exist, which is a computer-generated world. That kind of really sent a lot of us into paroxysms of fear, if you will. My part in it is actually pretty minimal. Hanging Pierce on certain rigs and against blue screens was very easy. The tough part comes in the back end of this once we have to start putting the rest of it in and making it real, because it will either stand or fall on whether the stuff works or not.
Overall, I think the tone is as uneven as a lot of Bond films. It's a very difficult line to cross, isn't it? So Octopussy is the best example of it. It's that fine line in which it does so well, doesn't it? Of occasional silliness, but actually a very serious story. Whereas Dine of the Day, you could argue it's the same thing. It's towing that line, and I think the script though is where the real problems are. As would, to be fair to Sam Mendes, Chris, with Spectre, the script didn't help either, did it? But no, but I think the script is the worst thing, isn't it? We decided in the review about Dine of the Day.
Some of the dialogue, it was probably maybe you could see signs of it in World Is Not Enough, but it was getting worse.
Yeah.
And some of it is, it's like wincingly bad. Of course, there are directorial choices, and some of the CGI, some of it is really troubling. People struggle with the invisible car. Was that his idea or was that Purvis and Wade? Because
I think
presumably
they've
something
been
must
a
have been
bit
in.
defensive about it with hindsight. Oh,
Yeah.
it wasn't meant to be that. And
I
Tom,
mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not someone who's overly bothered. I'm not
no,
too bothered about that. But I think I said this on Dine of the Day. I can understand why fans and Bond fans don't like it. And I don't, there are some Bond films where I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get the criticism. I don't understand why people don't
yeah,
absolutely love it. With this, I understand more. However, I have a bit of a soft spot for it, and maybe people disliking it has made me sort of want to root for it a bit more. And I generally think, as we've been saying, you are entertained throughout. It's never boring, I don't think. I always thought that the whole was better than the sum of its parts for me. There's loads of things I don't like about it, but when I've been through it and get to the end, I'm like, I've been entertained and like, I don't want every Bond film to be like that by any stretch. But it was in that period of they were a little bit unlucky because I know that the world changed with 9/11 and then like with Bourne, films suddenly got a bit more gritty, but they had been starting to get a bit, quite OTT and superhero films were just starting. So I can understand why it went the way it did. Not all of it is successful, but I think it's better than it's sort of ranking amongst a lot of fans, and I am pleased that it got a slight little,
yeah,
you know, uptick in people's opinions.
yeah. I think we're 20 plus years on now, aren't we? It's just about had enough time for a reassessment. I don't think it's going to get a Moonraker or a Well, no, I was going to say Quantum, but I think most of the public still aren't that bothered about that film. Whereas I think Dine of the Day, Math, remember when we went to the Merrills, our friends in America?
I do,
It
yeah,
was premiering on US television then, and they're sort of, casual young Bond fans. They absolutely lapped it up. And I
yeah.
do think it worked for the audience at the time. It was the most successful at the box office. It's just a bit of this revisionist history after the fact. Because if Casino Royale had bombed, then who knows what its legacy might be even better, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, I think time will be really kind and a bit of distance to this. I think yeah, I can start seeing it. I think because you know I'm sure when Moonraker came out, there's a lot of people who's like, oh, I don't like the direction it's going. It's too silly and this and that. And obviously, over time and obviously different generations, that's the sort of stuff that people really like. And I can see eventually one day there will be people who love Die Another Day because it is like a Moonraker. It has great action. It's fantastical. It's a little bit silly, but there'll also be that kind of like knowing, laughing along at the terrible dialogue, And again, it makes it more of a much more kind of enjoyable experience than anything that's like really po-faced and serious, and you're kind of just like, oh yeah, kind of scratching your chin. This is really deep. I think it would be, that's why I keep coming back to something like Dino there, just because it's unbridled, fun factor. And that's not to say it can't, and it's full of interesting ideas. The opening, the sword fight, there's the bit where he goes to the island, and the way there's references to previous Bond films. That's really great and really handled really well.
I wanted to, for it being the 20th Bond movie and the 40th anniversary and all that, I wanted to bring back all the old gadgets from the old movies. So we hustled up as many as we could find. Alligators from here, and we've got the briefcase and Rosa Kleb's shoe, and we've got the jetpack from Thunderball. We've dragged them all out. The aficionados might spot them all. We thought we'd give a pathos and a touch of history.
Invisible card doesn't bother me. I think, at that stage, it's like, it has moved in, like I say, in slightly fantastical, but I think I was much more critical of the use of CGI for stunts than I was for the use of CGI to make something invisible. I think that, for me, that was like, why haven't you got a stuntman to do that? Why are we watching terrible CGI? I can buy into. You've told me this is you're using technology all the time, rocket pads, all this sort of stuff, and you can, knock someone out in 2 seconds. I'll buy into all that. I can buy into an invisible car at the same time, but using really ropey CGI is where I can't. That's where it kind of lost me,
Mm.
Yeah, and there was, I think, coming out of the cinema at the time, there was a sort of visible, sorry, an audible few grunts, and the slight worry that this isn't really where we want to go long term. But like you said, Chris, many times on the podcast, if they kept churning them out one every 2 or 3 years, it's just another enjoyable film, isn't it? The World Is Not Enough has had the same revisionist take on it because of that. I think if they were all of the same ilk, then yes, this would be even. This would really would be a hater, wouldn't it? If it meant the next few films went even more, because they could have said, well, it was very successful. Let's have more of that. Let's have more cartoony humor and even more CGI. But yeah, I think we'll see what time does to it. But as a Bond film, it's still a Bond film, and it's it's one that you can throw on a lot more easily than others, perhaps some of the recent ones. So I think Lee deserves credit for that. Just in terms of some of his other films. Now, again, Mulholland Drive, no. Mulholland Falls. So when you're growing up, I didn't know anything, didn't know the difference, didn't realize one was unbelievably revered. I mean, Mulholland Drive, Mulholland Falls is never available. I've never seen it on TV or anything. So I'm really counting on you again, Chris, for this.
Yeah, again, it was solid. It was like it was at the time. It was sort of riding on the coattails of like LA Confidential and going back, and that sudden interest in noir and crime, LA set crime stories, and it's got a really great cast.
Yeah.
Again, just solid and entertaining and interesting ideas, but not massive. It isn't massively memorable, and I think that's probably why it's not available anymore. It's because everyone's forgotten that it is. But I mean, again, maybe a lot of these, it's nice that these films do get revisited now and again. But I do think it is worth, if you can see it, it is worth tracking down. But I won't try too hard, just so you can't blame me.
Spending 20 quid on streaming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I came here to deliver a message. Your presence is required back in Chicago.
It's cold in Chicago, which is why I came out here. Is Mr. Flynn being charged with a crime?
What are you, his lawyer?
No, but I'm represented by a good one. Now, what's my friend being charged with?
He did things in Chicago.
I beat all that, pal. I beat those indictments.
But, I mean, think about that. If you were told there's a Lee Tamahori film with Nick Nolte as the main... This is
great.
How on earth can you not see that? Yeah, Triple X 2 was obviously not Vin Diesel, was it? It was Ice Cube. So that was that was definitely appointed because of Die Another Day, wasn't it, for that?
Yeah, again, like, it's just, it's when you think about what was happening in cinema at the time, it all fits in. You know what I mean? It's like I remember at the time, like thinking that Triple X was such a silly concept, and to begin with, and then the sequel came around. It's like, well, again, it's like bought into the first one. It's not going to do anything in the second one that isn't. It can't be any more ridiculous. And even if it is, I'm sure it's going to be fun. And I just remember, I don't remember a huge amount of it. I just remember it was decent. Like I ended up watching the first one just because it was something to watch, and there was a proliferation of action films in during that period, and so it was just great, like stuff. Like Vin Diesel at the time obviously was quite the rising star at the time after Fast and the Furious, and the one that I can never remember. Yeah, that one. I want to call it the ridiculous sequel. But yeah, again, which was great. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Ridiculous, nice to see action films set in Europe as well that weren't Bond films, stuff like that. And so yeah, I think was it called State of the Union or something like that?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. You can picture a new film called that, like Captain America's State of the Union.
Yeah.
No, but it's also a bit like, have you seen the State of the Union?
Yeah. Very English idiom, yeah.
He blows up my car, he blows up my boats. Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, it was a golden era of just really flashy action films, wasn't it? Like Torque, Biker Boys.
Yeah.
They're all obviously Mission Impossible 2, but they're all the same sort of. Goodness me! I mean, those are better than others. Some of them are better than others.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's to do with obviously how the material was handled, and people can argue that something like Mission Impossible 2 is much more ridiculous than Die Another Day, but it's all opinions. But I think if you look at it in the context of its time, Die Another Day absolutely fits into what else was being produced at the time.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the it's a double-edged sword when it comes to Bond films, is that it absolutely is a product of its time, but also it can age it really quickly. Which is why I think 20 odd years later, the stuff that made people cringe at the time during the 70s is seen as charming now and fun and quirky. And I think that's what I mean. Give it enough time. I think Die Another Day will be better received as just a fun entry into the series.
It's the closest we'll get to a John Woo Bond film, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the other ones he did, we've mentioned Next briefly. I mean, it's a long time since I saw that. Is that Philip K. Dick, is it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Cage.
Again, Cage,
Yeah.
You've probably seen a lot of those shows. Mentalists, magicians, illusionists. You'd be shocked to know that sometimes, not often, but sometimes, it's the real deal. Masquerading as an act. Hiding behind a few $50 tricks. Hiding in plain sight. Because if the magician doesn't do that, the alternative is impossible for others to live with.
Interesting ideas, loads of CGI. Again, not mad. I think I watched it about 6 months ago.
Really? Yeah.
I don't really remember that one. Nicolas Cage probably shouting, probably in a terrible wig, lots of action, enjoyable. That's it.
Yeah.
That's my letterbox review.
You always get it mixed up with John Woo again at the same time. Paycheck.
Yes.
That's Philip K. Dick as well, isn't it? It's all linked.
And then there was another one with Alex Proyas. What's that one?
Knowing. Yeah,
Knowing.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, that one as well.
Good.
I get mixed up with.
Ridiculous, but good.
Yeah, fun.
That's the genre we're in, isn't it? We seem to be talking about. Yeah. Other ones he did after that, though, are probably not as well known. The Devil's Double, which was about Saddam Hussein's brother, wasn't it?
Saddam Hussein's son.
Saddam Hussein's son. Yeah.
And a lookalike of him who was used.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not seen it, but yeah.
Dominic Cooper, who's not a massive fan of him, but have you seen that, Chris?
I haven't. I remember, but it was quite popular at the time.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and I remember it's quite an interesting premise. But yeah, it was that period where Dominic Cooper was. It was like you couldn't make anything unless he was in it. So it was like decreed that you must ask his permission before making a film. No.
I think I just associate him too much with James Corden. I think because of the history book as well.
No! We must have discipline! Discipline! We must have discipline!
How was that, madam?
Excellent.
So after that, he did in 2016. He went back to New Zealand and did a film called Mahana with Tamora Morrison, which very, very well received, low key, really well shot film. Which again, is very difficult to obtain. So I really want to see that.
You're late.
Only by a minute.
If you're a minute late for heaven, do you think God will still let you in? I told him to get his hair cut.
Well,
What is that? It's my birthday present. Take it off. We're going to a funeral.
He did an episode of Billions, which is, basically a better version of Succession. So people check that out if they can. And he also ended with a film I did see called The Convert, which was, again, sort of, it's set in New Zealand again, but it's got Guy Pearce in. It's quite absolutely nothing like the rest of the CV that I've seen. It's quite dark and depressing. Obviously set in the past, and it was decent. It's something completely different. So that was on Sky, I think, last year. So it's worth checking out.
What about these people?
What will you trade for them?
My horse. My horse for their lives.
One horse, one life. Choose.
I cannot make that choice.
That was to be his last film, so it was certainly. I think he might have had a bit of a lull, but he seemed to be coming back a bit. So it is a shame that he's no longer with us, and who knows what he would have done next. It would have been fascinating to say. He had another film called Emperor, really big budget, about the Holy Roman Empire. You know, a sort of ridiculous action spectacular. But it's never to be released. I think there's problems with the funding. Now, if you remember, we interviewed Götz Otto, who was in that film, and he said he had a great time filming it, but unfortunately, it didn't find a distributor. So it's at the moment it's never going to be filmed. If you go on IMDb, it's like now brackets 2026, even though it was filmed, I think, might be 2015, 2016. But the cast, you know, Adrian Brody, Oliver Platt. Bill Skarsgård, Eddie Marzan, bizarre.
Never underestimate
Yeah.
The cynicism and the money grabbing of filmmakers that someone might end up paying for it just to then slap a sticker on it that says from the director of,
Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Falls. I can't get it right, but yeah. Dear me.
I hope that, and I'm sure it will be, that like he's celebrated and his contribution to Bond is celebrated because it deserves to be. You know, so many of those films that we've talked about are really, entertaining films. And, as Chris has kind of said, films are there, for various reasons, but a lot of the reason is to entertain. And he seems to have been successful in doing that, which isn't the most straightforward job in the world. And, some directors will go for acclaim and critical, but a couple of his films have got pretty good critical acclaim, but he's also managed to do those bigger sort of action blockbuster films to a pretty good degree of success. So, Lee Tamahori should be celebrated as a film director and as a Bond film director, and I'm sure he will be.
What more can you ask for as a career as a filmmaker to show your ability and range to produce films of different genres or and at scale as well. I think, like I say, hopefully will be remembered. He will always be remembered because he's part of the Bond series, and there will be people who hopefully, like I did when I was younger. You look up that director's name, and then you you go down that rabbit hole of going, oh right, and you start searching out. So maybe someone will, when that Die Another Day revival happens, the people will go in search of his other works, and there's enough in there and enough interesting stuff in there for people to. I would recommend doing that, even if it's just you search for the edge, and if you can find that, then I think you're winning.
Yeah, it's very sad news for the Bond community. We've tried to celebrate Die Another Day last year with our review and some interviews. Check them out, and everyone had good things to say about Lee as a director. We briefly celebrated the 20th anniversary 3 years ago, and when it comes to the time of the 25th anniversary, I think there will be even more recognition. We thank Lee for his contribution to the Bond series and cinema, and obviously his thoughts and prayers with his family. But we're going to be safe in the knowledge we'll be watching that film many, many more times, always enjoying it, always having a debate after it about all the ridiculousness of it. And yeah, we're glad it's in the Bond canon. We really are. So thank you, Lee, for your contributions, and yeah, long may the love rise for Die Another Day.
I tried to build these little moments of very, very old Bond movies in there, create new characters, old characters, Cuban characters, sense of espionage. There's Cold War, Korea.